Well, welcome everyone. I'm Carol Massar, Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg TV. The next couple of sessions here at the Bloomberg Green Festival is going to be about zero carbon careers. And when you want to know about what the labor force of tomorrow is going to look like, you got to talk to investors who are investing today in tomorrow's green technologies and green companies. And so we have two great investors with us for this session. We have two that have been really successful in many different ways. One is a Formula One champion. The other created and really changed the way that we look at solar energy. Both are sustainable investors. So I'm welcoming Jigar Shah. He's president and co-founder of Generate Capital. He's also the founder and CEO of Sun Edison. And also with us is Nico Rosberg. He's a sustainability entrepreneur, co-founder, Green Tech Festival, and he's the Formula One champion. Although Jigar, maybe you are too, and you just haven't shared that with us. So maybe that'll come out in the next 20 minutes. No, okay. Well,
just go karts. Just go karts.
Yeah, I'm on that speed too. Well, welcome. And I wanted to start with you before we get into your specific investments, and then what that means potentially for the labor force of tomorrow. Is I want to start broadly. How you think about the green investment world. And Jigar, let's start with you because you've been doing this for a long time. Generate has sustainability in a couple different areas, but how do you look at it broadly? And I know typically you're looking for a company that is mature, but you want to help them scale up. But tell us a little bit about that approach.
Yeah, it's one of those things that gets very confusing very quickly. I think in general, people think corporate equity, right? They're constantly thinking about venture capital or private equity or growth capital or SPACs, right? Where people go public. But in general, the big game in green investing has always been on the project side, right? That's where we invest $5 trillion a year in infrastructure, roads, bridges, new equipment, whatever. And, that's where renewable energy is now at $300 billion a year, according to Bloomberg, each year into good stuff instead of bad stuff, right? And that number has to get to a trillion, 1.5 trillion to stave off the worst impacts of climate change. So that's the part that we work on, is figuring how to get to that 300 billion up to 1.5 trillion. We don't work on the venture capital, private equity SPAC stuff.
Right. And infrastructure is so important. And I want to dig a little bit into that. Nico, come on in, though. Talk to us broadly about your approach. I know mobility is a big thing, and we'll get into the specific investments. But when you're thinking about investing in a green or sustainable company, what are you looking for?
Yeah, Jiga, I mean, the VC world isn't all that bad either, if I may just say. I've been achieving quite healthy returns there as well, although I'm sure you're doing awesome in the infrastructure space. No, nevertheless, yeah, I mean, I'm a mobility world champion, and now smart mobility is really my investing home. I've been completely dedicated to that, and really startups, in early stage, and it's been a fascinating ride. And what I look for is the potential to generate returns, but at the same time, the potential to have positive impact. That's what I'm striving for. It gives me purpose as well. It's really a great feeling when I know, okay, I'm dedicating money to this, but I know I'm also going to contribute to the wider public. So those are the two decisive factors.
How has COVID impacted any of your thinking about, I think for all of us, there have been so many injustices laid bare in the last 6 months, and whether it's access to food, whether it's access to equal health care, but we're looking at the impact by shutting down the economy that it's had on our, climate. There's just been so many things that I feel like are impacting how we think. Jigar, has any of what's happened in the last 6 months, has COVID impacted your strategy and how you think about sustainability investing?
Sure. Yeah. No, I think, from our customers' point of view, COVID has made it very clear that they actually need to plan for the future, right? And so when you think about all the solutions, whether it's electric vehicles or circular economy around waste, or whether it's around clean electricity, they're accelerating all of their efforts. I mean, you saw the Google announcement on Monday where they're going to 100% clean energy, not only for their electricity now, but forever. And they're going to match it 24/7 around the clock. And so I think that we've seen a great acceleration of our markets via COVID, just because things have gotten real. And I think a lot of the things where people thought they had 5 or 10 years left to plan, they're realizing no, like planning starts by doing things now and not just talking about it.
Yeah, I think the timing of the timeline has changed for so many different industries, whether it's hospitality, whether it's medicine in a big way. And we certainly have seen that with, the race to get a vaccine. What about for you, Nico, in terms of the impact of the virus and how you're looking at your sustainable investing strategies?
Yeah, so medium term, I certainly agree with Jigar. I think medium term, the whole sustainability space is going to get an extra boost as a result of this, because we've just seen how fragile we are as a society, and people are more and more aware. So that's really a small positive from this big crisis. But short term, nevertheless, there's been, of course, some great challenges, and some of my companies we've had to very much pivot as well. Like, I have an engineering company where we're doing physical analysis, and now we completely had to pivot to become like completely software simulation driven. And actually, I mean, for the medium term, that's been a good thing, but of course, short term, like, it's been proper hard. So it really depends on the cases. But again, in every crisis, there's an opportunity, and that I know from my Formula One days, that there's in the hardest times, that's where you can grow most and you can get the greatest opportunities. So that's what I'm trying to focus on.
Yeah, if there's one thing I've heard over and over again over the last 6 or 7 months is that stress, disruption, times of crisis really lead to innovation. I do want to get into where you guys are investing, where the money is flowing, what you're finding interesting, and you both are invested big time in mobility. So I want to know, and Nico, let me start with you. How do you approach mobility? What do you think about? Because you could play it autonomous, vehicles. You could do hardware. You could do infrastructure. Nico, your approach. And yours kind of has some fun things like flying taxis.
Yeah, Carol, thank you very much. So that's really a space that I've been very much deeply involved with, because I really believe in the great potential. And actually, in Germany, we can be very proud because we have two of the leading startups worldwide. We're competing with Jigar. You surely know Joby from California. So we're really on a level playing field with them at the moment with our two startups here in Germany. They just raised, I think, 600 million or some crazy amount, and we raised about 300. So we're there or thereabouts. And I mean, for me, flying taxis it's just an awesome solution, a mobility solution for the future. Because first of all, it's going to democratize flying, especially when you get rid of the pilot and you go autonomous, which is going to be in 5 to 10 years' time. It's going to make it a lot more affordable. It's going to decongest cities. It's going to be more quieter, cleaner, and it's going to increase our well-being as well, because we're going to be able to live outside of town much easier in the greener spaces and commute in every day, land on our office building, and all that for very affordable, reasonable fees. So there's huge potential
All
here, and
right,
that's
I
why.
have to jump in. I have to jump in. I love the idea of democratizing these flying taxis and making them affordable. What's affordable? I mean, realistically, you can take a helicopter from the city to the airport right now, but it could cost you a few $100s, a few $1,000s. How do you make it really uh, accessible to everybody? How much money do you
Yeah,
have to invest in this
at
to
the
make
moment,
it
yeah,
work?
at the moment, we're defining it as that it would be very similar to the price of a taxi in future in terms of costs. And so that's what I mean with affordable, because in general, many of us are able to afford regular or occasional taxi rides.
Okay, but you're saying that that's viable. You can make that happen.
Yes, absolutely. Also because the hardware is much cheaper longer term than a helicopter, for example, nowadays, because e-mobility is so much more simple. There's so much fewer components that it has a much greater range and much less service costs along the way. Sorry, sometimes I'm a bit difficult with my language because I use German a lot in my investing, so I have to switch in language. But a flying taxi like we have here in Germany, a Lilium Volocopter, can do a million kilometers without any major service costs. So over the duration, there's huge benefits there as well in terms of savings.
So, Jigar, come on in on this. What do you think about the e-world? What do you think about flying taxis? What do you think about autonomous?
Jigar,
Well,
I
I think
haven't seen
Nico's
you
exactly right.
infrastructure yet for
Wait,
landing spaces. What are you waiting for,
what, Nico?
Jigar? Infrastructure for landing spaces.
All right. You're trying to figure out a
No,
partnership here. I can see this, but go ahead, Jigger.
yeah, no, I mean, I'm all in. Look, I think that when you think about how incredibly complex and how risky our fossil fuel infrastructure is, it really is super risky. You're blowing stuff up in space, right? You're creating micro explosions to actually make a helicopter run and make everything go on time. And it's miraculous that people don't, blow up more often. With electric with electric helicopters, you're talking about something that is super safe. There's no mini explosions happening in the air. You're actually using electric motor technology that's 100 years old, right? And the same thing's true for cars. I mean, one of the things we're looking at is there's about $25 million to $50 million worth of cars a quarter that's coming off of lease from GM, Ford, Volkswagen, et cetera. We're looking at buying all of them, putting them into ride sharing applications, because Uber and Lyft and others have made commitments to be 100% EV by 2030. And by the way, it's 50% cheaper for the drivers than what they're currently paying. So the drivers don't make enough money. This puts an extra $200 a month into their pockets because the EVs are half the cost in terms of maintenance and fuel for them to operate, right? And so what happens is that Nico comes up with something extraordinary, and then it gets put out into the marketplace, and then 5 years later we come in and actually bring it to the masses with the lower cost of technology, the lower cost of capital that we bring to the table.
So when you think about EVs, I mean, is EV the future? Are autonomous vehicles, Nico, the future? No doubt about it, because I do feel like there's different options, whether it's hydrogen cells. I feel like the world is still looking at some different options. Do you see it as the future?
Well, certainly I think for the ride-sharing, electric cars are the future, absolutely. Autonomy is massively powerful for the unit economics. It's going to be a game changer. So that's, as I said, for flying taxis, it's going to be the same in the ride-sharing space. That is incredibly powerful. And not only that, I'm a big ambassador for road safety. It's going to save lives. Autonomous cars will one day be much, much safer than we are able to be as humans. So there's all these benefits. But then also there's different use cases, because if we look at trucks, we've all seen Nikola. I'll be interested to hear your opinion as well, Jigar, because that's a big infrastructure play there as well, with them needing to invest about $20 billion into setting up the infrastructure of having all those hydrogen refueling stations. But I believe, I mean, for long distance truck driving, certainly that's the best. That's a great solution, and the long term that will be the winning one, I'm sure.
Well, Jigar, what do you make? GM just thinks Nikola is worth a $2 billion investment. They want to work with them. What do you think?
Well, I think that the autonomous stuff in general is going to come, right? The question really is, are we going to rush it, right? If we rush it, what happens is that all those people whose lives are saved don't get saved, right? Because one person dies from autonomous because someone rushed it, and suddenly we put a moratorium on everything for 10 years, right? And so I think the culture is the part that we really have to be careful about, is not rushing it, because I think if we just rush it, just like a lot of investors from Silicon Valley want to do, you end up in a situation where you just have mothers against autonomous driving, and suddenly like you're set back for 15 years. Look, I think on Nikola, we're one of the largest users of liquid hydrogen in the United States, right? Our investment through Plug Power into forklifts for Amazon, Walmart, et cetera, we're using 27 tons of hydrogen a day now. And so we actually already have refueling stations at 100 plus locations. And so when I look at Nikola, look, I think that, does he have a product that's actually working, that's commercialized, that's ready to go? No, he himself has said his first product is rolling off the line maybe 2 years from now. But, look, he plays a useful function around the hype bubble, right? We're creating a bubble. We're trying to convince everybody that Class 8 vehicles are going to actually electrify. Most people, by the way, continue to believe that that's never going to happen. I mean, when you talk to the vast majority of people who drive Class 8 vehicles, they don't see how 3,000 pounds of lithium-ion batteries with the Tesla Semi and 3,000 pounds of reduced amount of goods that you can transport as a result is going to work, right? And Nikola comes in and says, we're going to do a range extender. So we're also electric, but we're going to use fuel cells to extend the range. Fantastic, right? But you're going to need hype. You're going to need all this enthusiasm around the stock, et cetera, to make it through the next 3 years. It's like going to be brutal for them for the next 3 years. They're going to have delays in their product launches, and people are going to bet against them, right? And that's the beauty of how this stuff works.
So basically, they need an Elon Musk behind them, right, to create the hype.
Well, they've got Trevor.
Well, they do, but you think about the trials and tribulations that Tesla went through, right? There was a point where he could do no wrong, and then he could do no right, and then he could do no wrong again. So, you do kind of need to create hype and excitement to get these new innovative technologies kind of through their tough times, right, Jigar?
No, we were the same, right? I mean, when I was
Yeah.
CEO of Sun Edison, we offered no money down solar. People thought we were selling snake oil. California tried to make us illegal when we first came out, right? I was on the cover of Bloomberg and Fortune and all that stuff, and we created a hype bubble. We like made sure that everyone understood that you weren't sexy unless you put solar on your rooftop, right? That like all of your ESG goals and all of your like green goals were useless unless you had our solar panels on your roof. And guess what? We became the first billion-dollar unicorn in the solar space, right? And so it's one of those things where, today $1 trillion has been invested through our solar financing program, right? And so it's one of those things where you need that hype bubble in the beginning because that's how you
Right.
break through. That's how people talk about you. That's how you get into the mainstream media.
So
Jigar,
I
can
want to
I
talk about,
ask a follow-up
yeah, go ahead,
question?
Nico. Yeah, no, go ahead,
I'm,
Nico.
I'm here in Berlin at my festival, and in Berlin, unfortunately for us Germans, the first electric buses to be on the road were BYD. And I'm following the news, of course, because you've been hitting the news with your plays quite a lot lately. So I wanted to touch maybe just on your project there with BYD, where you're investing up to 200 million for the US rollout with a leasing model. Can you touch on that and what your expectations for that is?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's one of those things where you have 20,000 buses operating in China, right? And in the United States and in much of Europe, it's still foreign. And people think, is it going to work? Is it actually going to take people places? And so what we've done with BYD is said, look, you can do this no money down too, right? So you don't have to pay anything for the bus. You just pay a monthly payment. And the monthly payment happens to be cheaper than your maintenance savings, cheaper than your fuel savings. And oh, by the way, the buses are emergency vehicles. And so if something goes wrong, right, you can actually like power your entire emergency center with these buses. And it's enormous. I mean, the take up has been fantastic, right? From LA to New York to other places. We've got campuses from Stanford to UC Irvine to others who are doing it now too. And it's one of those things where, yeah, they're 6 years behind China, but for them, it's new to them and they're doing it finally, which is fantastic, right? And it's one of these things where like the complication that we solve is like, for instance, in the bus space, the person who owns the fuel budget is different than the person who owns the buying the bus budget, which is different than owns the maintenance budget. So it's three different budgets. And unless you can traverse all three budgets, they can't figure out how to buy EV buses because for any one of them, it's too expensive.
Right.
And this is the kind of ridiculous minutia that we have to get involved in because that's how you get $1 trillion into the space.
Well, cooperation, whether it's, on one project or whether it's global and seeing what other folks are doing can make a difference in terms of innovation kind of getting a foothold. I want to ask you while we're on energy, because we did a poll on our first day at the Green Festival here at Bloomberg yesterday, and we asked, maybe our guys can bring it up for everybody who's listening to this. We asked what will be the main source of power by 2040. And there it was, nuclear energy, 17%, renewables, 72%. So we're talking about wind and solar, and then fossil fuels, 11%. Nico, does that feel about right to you?
Yeah, certainly that's in the right direction. I wonder if nuclear maybe might have a bigger share by 2040 in that time frame. But apart from that, I think certainly it's the right direction.
Jigar, you agree?
No, I think that's right. I think nuclear has unfortunately been hampered by the dinosaurs that were promoting it 15 years ago. I think you're starting to see a lot of really cool upstarts from Oklo to NuScale to others who've come out with dramatically different designs, right? I mean, even in the fusion side and some of the other, ridiculously interesting things like brilliant power. And so my sense is it's going to be 2030 before those guys have all the approvals to roll out in a big way, but they can make a big difference by 2040.
Hey, the other thing I wanted to just touch upon quickly, and an area that you guys are investing in is kind of the food area, the agricultural area. There's so much going on. And I mean, I feel like this pandemic, again, reminding us that not everybody has, great access to food, if you will, or we're not producing it in a way that is mindful of the environment. Nico, this is something that you're investing in, sustainable food. You're also thinking about how things are packaged.
Yeah, very much. I mean, we're making huge progress there, and I've just invested in a startup as well here in Germany, which it's really about purpose, and all these companies are integrating more and more purpose, and that's lovely to see, and it's very, very powerful. And the consumer, as we all know, is becoming much more sensitive to that. And so this company, for every package that for every bar you buy, they plant one tree. The whole packaging is sustainable. It's only 7 ingredients, so it's totally transparent, totally honest. And that's kind of the companies that I believe in for the future. Purpose is so decisive for the upcoming 5 to 10 years, also for success, not only for doing good for the people, but also for success.
And Jigar, for
No, we
you
totally
guys,
agree.
I mean, yeah, go ahead, please, go ahead.
No, we totally agree. I think there's been several companies who've really done a great job here investing $20, $40 million worth of capital to come up with, a viable product. And now you've got the huge consumer branding companies who've said, we got to do this. We haven't done anything new for 60 years. We've been on plastic for 60 years. And now we've got to really make a huge shift because people care. And, they're starting to come to us because now they need a $100 million check. And they don't want to get it from venture capital or private equity because our capital is far cheaper than that. And so we're starting to do $100, $150 million rollouts of these technologies, helping them to expand to actually, provide all of the plastic replacement needs for these big consumer packaging companies like Unilever or Procter & Gamble or others. And we're super excited about that. I mean, but separately in the ag space, you look at like soil carbon, right? One of the consequences of the green revolution, where we've over fertilized all of our soils, is that our soil carbon is down to 0%, 1% soil carbon, when it should be at 10% soil carbon, right? And so part of the biggest ways to sequester carbon into from the atmosphere is by leaving it in the soils. And by the way, big companies like Monsanto, Bayer are a part of this, right? So it's not just small upstart companies. And so it's one of those things where the farmers don't have the $8,000 necessary to make these conversions out of their own pockets. So someone's got to fund that. And at scale, it's $1 trillion to actually make this huge conversion. But it's in line with some of the largest opportunities that we have in front of us to reduce carbon emissions.
Right. And these are some of the things that you certainly are investing in. I do want to ask you in terms of spotting trends. We just have a few minutes left here. I know, Nico, you've got your Green Tech Festival. It's happening this week in Berlin. Your first year, I believe. I'm just curious what you get out of it. What kind of trends have you spotted?
I'll let Jigar take it first.
Oh.
Yeah, look, I mean,
I was talking.
Yeah,
okay.
no, I think Nico's Green Tech Festival is fantastic.
Well, tell us, and one thing I wanted to ask you, Jigar, because I thought what was really interesting that you said to me in a prep call on the radar is that this whole idea of this replacement of plastic, I know we're doing it in our household. You see that as a big thing that's going to really impact our world over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, so this year is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, right, around the world. And we unfortunately had most of them canceled because of COVID. But I think these green tech festivals that Nico is doing in Germany and others are doing around the world are super critical. And I think what we get out of it is the ability to communicate directly to influencers and other people who are interested that we're ready, right? It could have been that 10 years ago we weren't ready. It wasn't really that easy to live a plastics-free lifestyle 10 years ago, but it is today. You can live a fossil fuel-free lifestyle today. It wasn't really that easy to do 10 years ago, right? And so you're in a place where you can live in an all-electric home today, right? And avoid natural gas or other fossil fuels to heat or cool your home. That wasn't really easy to do either 10 years ago. And telling people about it matters, right? Because it's that first 1% of people who are interested, who are the real thought leaders and the trailblazers, and they're the early adopters. And they're the ones who are feeding our companies with orders today. And then once those companies get to scale, well, then that's when the masses take advantage of it.
What I'm seeing as well here in my festival is the explosion in solutions now on a B2B level as well for businesses to go greener. It's unbelievable. I mean, we're launching a lot of new products here this week as well. There's cloud solutions, sustainability cloud solutions. There's energy efficiency management and startups. It's unbelievable what a hype there is now growing in this space. And that's fantastic to see because it's exactly those solutions that the companies are looking for. And that's in a B2B space. And at the same time, as you were saying, of course, a big part of what we're doing is also to help shift the consumer mindset, because that is a big challenge which we need to target. And also that, I mean, consumers are becoming more and more open-minded, and that's fantastic to see as well.
Yeah, the one other thing I would add here.
Oh, go ahead.
So one other thing I'd add here is that there have been a lot of empty promises from government leaders, from university heads, from cities, et cetera. And part of the reason these festivals matter so much is it empowers people with the information to go to those folks and say, you made a press release that you were going to reduce emissions 2 years ago when it was sexy for you to do so. You haven't done anything yet. Well, here are 10 companies that I met at this festival that I'd love for you to talk to and start implementing stuff, whether it's electric buses or recycling and circular economy stuff. It's one of those things where we got to hold people to account.
Well, and I think that's a point. We just have about a minute left here. I mean, in terms of the next panel is going to talk a little bit more about the jobs, the green workforce. But I mean, Jigar, you had said to me, I mean, the people are out there to help companies make this switch to a greener, more sustainable way of doing things, correct?
Correct. And we're currently the largest job creator and have been since 2008. Since the financial crisis, the green economy in the United States has generated 1 out of every 14 jobs in the entire economy. 1 out of every 14, from LED lighting retrofits to electric vehicle manufacturers to solar technicians, wind technicians, right? And no one knows it, but that's where all the careers are.
All right, we're going to have to leave it. Go ahead.
Here at my event, we managed to get the leading event manager in Europe to join us this year from a leading digital event, and it's really because we're having such an impact and we have such strong purpose. We're a startup compared to this huge digital event where she's come from, but she said, I'm working so hard, at least let me work so hard and do some good at the same time. So I want to join you because what you're doing is awesome. And that's the power as well that these companies, these startups now have all around the world, that are really dedicated to sustainability, to hire the greatest talent out there, which is also a fantastic trend.
Totally. Business with purpose.
Business with purpose. And listen, I could talk to you for hours. Both of you, thank you so much. Nico, good luck with the festival. Jigar, thank you. Both of you, good luck with your investments. And thanks so much for sharing some time with us on this Tuesday.
Honored to be on Bloomberg Green. Thank you so much.